You don't have a ticket. Someone like you could never understand music. Thanks to my father-in-law and mother-in-law, I found myself at a classical concert venue, but my ticket had mysteriously disappeared. How dare someone like you try to mingle with us? Go home. I was clearly being discriminated against, but the person who stepped up to help me was my mother-in-law. Little did my sister-in-law know, she was about to face her own downfall. My name is Betty. I fell in love with music at a young age. Being surrounded by the music I loved was always a joy, but due to my shy and reserved personality, I never really played with others. I just played alone with toy instruments. We weren't a wealthy family, so taking music lessons was out of the question. In elementary school, I eagerly joined the wind ensemble and continued through high school. However, whenever we had to play as a group, I was always the one holding everyone back. This experience left me with a deep-seated trauma, making me uncomfortable in group settings, even beyond music. I found solace in playing an instrument alone, often retreating to a corner of the music room. My music teacher noticed this and introduced me to a well-known musician who recognized my rare talent. Unfortunately, my parents never understood or supported my passion, as we weren't well off. I often thought that with proper training, I might feel comfortable playing in a group. However, due to our financial situation, that was never an option. Eventually, I gave up on pursuing music professionally and settled for enjoying it as a hobby. When I received my first paycheck as an adult, I went to my first ever classical concert. I was a big fan of a particular family of musicians whom I deeply admired. The tickets were expensive, even for the worst seats, but I decided to go for it, thinking it might be my only chance. I had no regrets. The experience was worth far more than the price of the ticket, and I left feeling deeply satisfied. I'd love to go again if the opportunity arises, but I can't afford to buy expensive tickets regularly. I contribute a portion of my salary to my family and need to save for my wedding as well. Regarding marriage, I'm just waiting to meet someone who feels right. After working for 3 years, my parents have started hinting that I should think about my future. In the past, people usually marry in their late 20s to early 30s. My mom married my dad around that time too. Nowadays, personal choice is highly valued. My parents understand this and don't nag much, but their lack of pressure makes me feel like I need to hurry up and get married. Even after getting a job, I'm still shy and introverted. I've been invited to group dates by female coworkers, but never really talked to anyone. Just considering going on a group date is growth for me, so I decided to start with online conversations through a dating app. I met a guy who loves music, and we hit it off online. After exchanging messages for a while, he asked to meet up, and I agreed. When we met, I was stunned to realize he was one of the members of a famous musical family I admired. People might wonder why I didn't recognize him from his profile picture, but who would ever think it was actually them? His name was common enough not to raise suspicion. I figured if he knew I was a fan, he might turn me down, so I kept it a secret at first. Eventually, I opened up about my shyness and discomfort in large groups. He said, "I feel the same way." The more we talked, the more we connected, and we decided to get married. When I finally told him I was a fan, he said he was honored and his smile was radiant. Things were progressing smoothly, and we set a date to meet his parents. His family members were usually busy touring, but there happened to be one day when they were all home. Nervously, I entered his house and waited for his parents. His sister-in-law entertained me in the meantime. She said, "As you might know, we're a musical family. If you can't play at least the violin, you're not really part of the family, you know." I was in trouble. I had never touched a violin in my life, let alone played one. The school band club didn't have room for violins. Just then, his parents stepped in and said, "If she has musical skills, any instrument will do." But his sister-in-law insisted on the violin. Then he said, "Mom, don't we have a practice violin? Can we borrow it?" And added, "Please give Betty and me some time for a quick lesson." His mother agreed. "Why not? It'll be interesting to see what you can do in about an hour with a string instrument, especially a violin." I wasn't confident I could make a sound in just an hour. "But trust me, Betty, you'll be fine," he said. I took his word for it and asked my mother-in-law if she'd lend me her violin. He had a practice room, and we spent an hour there. It was my first time with a violin one-on-one. Honestly, I was terrible, but "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star" is a song I know well, so imagining it was easy. I focused on putting emotion into my playing since my technique was non-existent. "You're doing great, Betty," my mother-in-law said. "Just making the sound on the violin is hard. You've come a long way, especially considering it's your first time. You're giving the music the respect it deserves." He also said, "You move me," and gave me a big round of applause. The only one who seemed unimpressed was my sister-in-law. She probably thought I would embarrass myself and never expected me to win over her mom. As a result, I was welcomed into this musical family and officially became a married woman. My relationship with my father-in-law and mother-in-law is good, but a troubling dynamic with my sister-in-law is emerging. She frequently picks on me, makes snide remarks, and harasses me. She's very pushy and always retaliates if I try to stand up for myself, which I struggle to do, making her even more irritated. The harassment has only intensified. When the family was on tour, there were days when my sister-in-law wasn't performing due to the tour's schedule. On those days, it was just my sister-in-law and me at home. Although we had a housekeeper, my sister-in-law insisted that I cook. After tasting my meals, she criticized them as awful and poorly made. Even when she asked me to remake a dish, she would throw it away in front of me, claiming she didn't want to eat it anymore. She would even spill soup intentionally. Additionally, she would step on my back or put her foot on my head. During family dinners, she would often call me to the bathroom for no reason. "When will you learn proper table manners?" she demanded. "I don't want to share a table with someone like you." Although my husband, father-in-law, and mother-in-law believe I'm improving, she keeps saying, "I can't believe you can't even manage that." I don't think I'm as ill-mannered as she claims. Nevertheless, the sadness and frustration from not being acknowledged make me feel disheartened. After she leaves, I retreat to a quiet corner and wipe away my tears. My husband soon finds me and asks, "I was worried when you didn't come back." "Wait, why are you crying? Is she giving you a hard time? Don't hold back. Tell me everything." "What a sweet man," I almost said, but then I heard the joyful laughter from the family gathering and didn't want to disrupt the mood just for my own issues. If I could be patient, maybe it would help maintain the peace. "No, it's not like that. I get along with her," I said. "But you were crying." "I was just so happy to be married and accepted by everyone. I couldn't help but cry," I explained. My husband paused for a moment, then nodded in agreement. "Yeah, you're right." He took my hand and said, "Let's continue with dinner," leading me back to the table. It seemed like we might finally get some downtime from my father-in-law and mother-in-law. They even suggested attending a classical music concert as part of my welcome. Listening to various performers and interpretations from different conductors could be enlightening. They asked which concert I'd like to attend, and I recommended one they had previously enjoyed. They discovered they might be able to get tickets through a connection. However, my sister-in-law insisted on handling the tickets herself, claiming she had some influence with the people involved. On the day of the event, we arrived at the venue, and my sister-in-law went to the staff entrance. After a brief conversation with the staff, she returned with what looked like tickets. She distributed the tickets to everyone, but I didn't receive one. People who are broke wouldn't understand music anyway, right? Excuse me, but you and I are on different levels. Know your place. Now go home. You don't belong here. My husband offered to check if there were any spare tickets available. However, not wanting to escalate the situation or make things uncomfortable for everyone, I decided it was best to leave and began to pull my husband away. "Wait, Betty, you're not the one who needs to leave. It's her who's always mistreating you," said my mother-in-law, who had been quiet until now. "Why me? Listening to music has nothing to do with being rich or poor. People have their own ways of enjoying it. It's not for others to interfere." My mother-in-law scolded my sister-in-law, who had always been cold toward me. "You think I don't know? It's clear something's been going on behind my back." "That's not true." "Really? I find your envious attitude far more impoverished," my mother-in-law retorted. My brother-in-law chimed in, "Aren't you always sleeping through concerts? It might seem like you're oblivious, but it's glaringly obvious," he chuckled. Sure, sister-in-law graduated from a music conservatory and won some awards, but she became complacent and stopped improving. You have to practice your instrument every day, or your skills will deteriorate. If you're going to lecture others on music, maybe you should first focus on improving yourself, my brother-in-law said. My brother-in-law regretted not being able to address his wife's lack of skill and attitude as a musician directly, but he couldn't bear the idea of causing harm to his brother's wife. You have neither the awareness nor the ambition as a musician. I think it's time for you to leave our family. I'm tired of supporting someone with no promise of growth. It was an opportune moment for my sister-in-law to lash out. You're one to talk, old lady. Your sense of music is so outdated that I can't even stand it. It sounds like something for the poor, so of course, I'd be thrilled to leave this awful musical family." Her words grew even stronger. She proclaimed she would go solo, make her own fortune, and prove everyone wrong. I thought people like her were incapable of self-reflection, but I didn't expect such intense rage. In the end, she stormed off, throwing a concert ticket to the ground as she left. My mother-in-law picked up the ticket and handed it to me. "Let's go," she said, taking my hand as we walked together. My second experience at a classical concert was deeply moving. Different musicians and conductors brought unique vibes and interpretations to the same piece, making me wonder how the same composition could sound so varied. I discovered new interpretations and learned a great deal. My mother-in-law seemed to notice my enthusiasm. Meanwhile, the tension between my brother-in-law and sister-in-law reached a breaking point, and their attempts at reconciliation failed, leading to their eventual divorce. My former sister-in-law hastily organized her solo concert, disregarding advice. Overconfident, she rented a venue with a capacity of 5,000 people, a size rarely filled even by popular classical concerts. Unsurprisingly, ticket sales were poor, and she ended up buying many herself to make the hall appear less empty. Unsold merchandise left her with a warehouse full of stock. Her second solo concert fared no better, attracting only a handful of attendees. Lacking both talent and a likable personality, she faced widespread online criticism. Unable to pay her staff or cover other expenses, she quickly fell into debt. Her street performances were met with harsh comments like, "You're terrible, stop annoying us," and even resulted in water being thrown at her. My mother-in-law suggested that I should receive professional music training, given my apparent talent. I was both surprised and delighted by the idea, though I felt it might be a bit late to start learning an instrument. However, it seemed like an opportunity I had thought I had missed was presenting itself once again, and I could hardly believe it. I was told I could choose the instrument, and I'm leaning towards the violin, especially since my husband has been helping me with it. My mother-in-law found an outstanding instructor renowned for nurturing many skilled violinists. I even began accompanying the family on their concert tours and assisting behind the scenes. Every day feels blissful as I immerse myself in music and notice my improvement. My current dream is to perform a solo with my husband accompanying me on the piano.